So, welcome back to the Riyad Football Show. We have a special quickie for you today where we talk about Leicester City 5-2 win against Man City. And who else to have than my friend again, Ben Ferree. How are you doing, Ben?
I'm good, Ryan. How are you doing today?
Same deal. Roland Garros started, so I have something to watch on the weekday again. But I mean, let's get straight into it because, of course, I have you on here. This is a pretty monumental win from the scoreline and also like we've previously chatted like on our own. It doesn't really happen. Like Leicester City doesn't really beat City, especially in this way. So tell me about it. Like tell me all about it. Like your emotions going through the game, but then also all the result and what it means to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of go back. Lineups were announced, and Leicester kind of went in this 4-5-4-1 formation. Figured it was going to be entirely defensive setup, make everything narrow, compressed, and just try to hit City on a counterattack, which is kind of what Brendan Rodgers did last year against Man City, and it never worked really at all. I know Leicester took the lead at the Etihad last year in a game, but then just from there, kind of everything fell apart. Um, Leicester decided to put Daniel Amarte back in the lineup. This was his second professional game in 2 years, after he had a terrible injury a couple years ago against West Ham. So he was back in the lineup. So there's a bit of concerns there whether he was, kind of up to pace or not and back into playing form. All of a sudden, he's starting at center back against, one of the best clubs in the world. So there's definitely a bit of question marks of this side. And really, obviously the scoreline shows it. They came on, they answered them. And I don't think obviously they got help from three pens, but I don't think any of those were really mistakes, so to say. I think those were all very targeted by Leicester and something that just kind of happened because of their game plan going into it. But really, just in general, opening up, I fully expect, Leicester to get a point from this game was a victory, really. I think going to the Etihad, especially early in the season like this, you had a couple other big clubs dropping points here and there. I think getting a point from this game would be huge for Leicester. And then right away, Mahrez has one of the goals that is going to be one of the goals of the season. Off of a deflection, falls out. That strike was just insane with his weak foot as well. And of course, it had to be him against Leicester. It always seems to be him against Leicester. But from there, Leicester really packed it in, to say the least. Even Vardy was getting into the defensive efforts. He was man-marking Rodri on Man City, which was just an interesting tactic from Rodgers. The entire team was compressed, so packed in, but Man City just couldn't figure out a way through it. They couldn't play through the center of the field. They played it wide and couldn't get the ball back into the center in the way that they like to. De Bruyne got kind of shut down from that angle. Phil Foden was very, very quiet. They were playing a team really without a real striker. So they really took advantage of that with that setup. And in the first half, the transitions to offense weren't great. They're a bit slow, a bit, we're in a new shape here because Leicester never really plays that five at the back. Most of the memories of five at the back were from last year after the lockdown when it was losing points to Brighton. So it was very interesting to see. They eventually, though, they figured out those transitions. They started getting balls in behind. And like I said, those penalties, it was really more of a targeted thing. They played the ball through. You get Vardy in front of a defender. The center backs are going to bite and be aggressive in that situation and then earned a penalty. And there's also a world-class goal from James Maddison, so it's good to see him back on the field and getting minutes in as he's getting more back into shape off his injury.
It's definitely interesting to look just because, of course, a different formation that Leicester doesn't really use, especially in situations like this. I feel like with their personnel, it's best for them to pack it in and then advance the ball and look for opportunities and counter when you have someone like Jamie Vardy who could still go at the age of 32, 33 right now. And it's such a fascinating game in a way that the chances are there, but City is not really taking it. And we're gonna talk about real quick here, of course, Pep Guardiola and Eric Garcia. They have some comments after the match where they're oh, we're just playing a team that's gonna pack it in and absorb the pressure and whatever and frustrate you and whatever Of course, that's all BS looking back at it because that's an effective way to play against City. But then you look at the shot chart and I have it in front of me right now. They have 10 shots outside of the area. They have 6 inside the area, and of course 2 were converted. But in the end, that's not good numbers, especially for a team like City where they could occupy the half space, cause confusion in the defense, and then hit you with someone like Sterling or Foden behind everyone on the defense and then pin balls back in. That's how they work. In that 5-4-1 that's so compressed in the middle, like you said, they can't make it work. And the frustration literally got to them toward the end as they're trying to chase down the score. And they start taking long shots and amounting to nothing. It's like mini XG dots that, can't really convert. So, but then going back to Leicester, there are some really good performances. Of course, Jamie Vardy, we don't have to talk about how good he still is. But then there are players that stood out to me, like Timothy Castagne, who assisted Vardy on his second goal, I believe. That's not a penalty. And of course, he manned the right side very well. You got Tielemans putting in one of those performances that people were ranking him highly as one of the best up-and-coming players, and now he has one of the games where he showed that, especially with the through ball to Castagne again, and then Maddison, of course, playing well. So what are some of the biggest takeaways from, City's comments? And you admitted, like you said it, it doesn't really work, but why did it work this time, in your opinion?
Yeah, I don't know. Just going back to City real quick, you look at it, and they had 72% possession in this game. And I think this is normally how most teams shape up to play Man City. And most teams, especially in the Premier League, you either set up in this shape very defensive or you attack City. And most teams, bar Liverpool, can't really do that. So this is what City gets on a week-by-week basis in the Premier League. But I don't know, I think it was just the tight-knit team defending of us. They literally had 11 people behind the ball throughout the game, and it made for some boring soccer. It really did. The game, for the most part, was Man City passing the ball around the arc, trying to figure out a way to get into the middle of Leicester. I think what you have, it really comes down to Tielemans had really a game of his life in this game. He showed every bit of the player that he is thought to be in the prospect of up and coming and whatever before he came into Leicester. He had a couple of tough performances last year, especially at the end of the year, just wasn't really looking that great, but he looks like back to the guy that Leicester brought in 2 years ago. You also mentioned Timothy Castagne, who is far and away one of the best signings, I think, in the Premier League. I think that's safe to say for any club at this point. Leicester, without Ben Chilwell, who went to Chelsea, needed to bring in a fullback. And of course, James Justin is still manning the left side in Chilwell's place, Castagne more on the right side naturally. So we'll see what kind of happens there when Ricardo Pereira comes back to full fitness from his injury. But anyway, Timothy Castagne, 1 goal, 2 assists already to open the season in 3 games. I think you couldn't really ask for a better opening 3 games from him. And just his ability, not from change to defense to offense in a blink of an eye, get forward, and then just find that perfect ball into the middle. That connection between him and Vardy is something that, as that continues to blossom, is going to be very, very fun to watch, because you saw it on Vardy's second goal of the day. A beautiful through pass from Tielemans. Castagne gets on it, and a perfect near post low cross into Vardy, who then does a Jamie Vardy thing and flicks it behind him and scores the goal. But Timothy Castagne has been so impressive for Leicester, both defensively and getting forward in offense and helping support there. Whereas right now, Leicester on the wing, Harvey Barnes is really cementing himself as a starting winger, but then there isn't really that second guy right now who's really shown that starting desire over there. So it's good to have Castagne getting forward, helping out in that attack, in that switch, in that counter attack. So I think it really just came down to why it worked. It was just that right day for Leicester. They had the pieces in, they stuck to their man, they did their jobs, and they were able to flick it up, have a couple moments of brilliance, took advantage of some City mistakes that really you don't see on a day-to-day basis. And it just was kind of the perfect storm for Leicester. But now they're going to have to back it up and continue it through the rest of the season, because once again, it kind of feels like last year all over again, just coming a lot earlier in the season, where now the pressure's on. Everyone notices a 5-2 win. Everyone notices putting 5 goals past Pep. So it's what are you going to do moving forward from now?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. We talked about the mistakes right there. You see Kyle Walker putting in a pretty horrendous performance, honestly. And the defense is still a little bit like coordinative, and they're still trying to find their rhythm. And of course, like they have Ruben Diaz coming in, but sometimes like that might not be enough, especially in a pinch where after suffering a defeat like that, where your defense is basically taken apart in a very, I would say it's a very rather unceremonious way, because you've been pinning it down forever, and 11 men behind the ball, and they still find a way to put five past you. That's a problem like City really have to address into. But then, like, talking about Castagne, like I completely agree in that his like decisions on when to go up and when to be back, especially, is very very good. In that Atalanta team, of course, he's on the right, and someone like Robin Gosens is on the left. And with like center backs like Rafael Toloi, they sometimes like push way up into the pitch, but then Castagne still manages that space very well. Like he's personally one of my favorite players coming out of last season, just watching soccer in general. Of course, less so Serie A, but then when Atalanta is on, I have nothing on. I will throw them on because they play some really really entertaining soccer. And like you said, I feel like as of right now, he's definitely one of the best signings made in the Premier League, especially in this condensed and kind of weird transfer window. I mean, looking into the future, like yes, like you said, teams are going to take notice. But then I want to talk about like very briefly about Harvey Barnes, because for like the early first half, like I know he's the established winger probably on the left for your team, but then for like most of the early first half, you see him break away a few times, but he doesn't have a move. He just runs. And I was like, what am I even watching there? But I guess when it comes to like an emphatic win like that, you could put that aside for a little bit and revisit it later. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think when 5 goals go in, you kind of ignore some of the Harvey Barnes. But no, Harvey Barnes just in general, he's kind of an interesting player coming up through. I mean, he shows the flashes pretty much in every game of being a player who like could break through on the England national team. Like he shows that level of play on a consistent basis. It's just the things that he does then the rest of the game are just so random and out there. But like you said, like he would get in multiple situations, especially early in this game, the first half. When Leicester was losing this game, needed a goal to get back in. There's a perfect counterattack. He'd get the ball, and Garcia would just take it away from him every single time. He tried the same move about 3-4 times, and it didn't work every time. And it's like, I mean, the class for him, what's lacking for him is the finishing in that final third. He'll get into the position. He has incredible pace. He has decent enough on-the-ball ability. It's just in that final third when it's the moment where he either needs to play it wide, throw it out and then cross it in, or, this is where I need to step over, cut it in, and take a shot. Or he just doesn't have that finishing ability in the final third, and that's what's really holding him back right now. And I mean, you see that in a week-by-week basis as well. You saw that against West Brom, the opening game of the season as well. But at the end of the day, when you beat Man City 5-2, you're really nitpicking when you're coming at Harvey Barnes for a couple little mistakes here and there. But overall, he's been much, much improved this season from last season. Those moments of brilliance are becoming more and more often. Just needs to consistently put it together.
Mm-hmm. And a final note, I would like to say all 3 penalties, of course, like we said, it's mistakes, but it's not like one of the like those ticky-tacky like handball penalties that like I'm sure everyone's fuming about by now. So that's honestly, like, I was watching it, of course, like you said, there are boring parts, but then it's a pretty fun match to watch, especially seeing how the dynamic and the paradigm kind of shifts from City being City, and then slowly starting to lose themselves and going into panic mode. Ben, this is a special one. Thank you very much for coming on. Your insights really helped, and like we said, like everyone is looking at Leicester and what they're going to try to achieve right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Ryan. Appreciate it anytime, man.
Yep. All right, that's all we have for today. Check back later. I think I will have a kind of series of episodes coming in later in the week. So, yeah, stay tuned.